Coming up this morning on the Dattitude podcast, much to the dismay of about 90% of the Who Dat fan base, maybe more than that, Mickey Loomis told the world he was staying as general manager. And as we told you here on Dattitude many months ago, it was always going to be his decision. So what now? What's going on inside that building that houses the brain trust of the New Orleans Saints? Is there any more insight on who the next coach will be? Who better to answer all of our questions than Times-Picayune sports columnist Jeff Duncan, who asked Loomis some important questions himself at his Monday press conference. Dunk comes on after the monologue along with some clips from Loomis, and Gabe is here for a look at the updated lines for this weekend's NFL divisional round playoff games and odds on other teams' coaching searches. Is primetime really a leading candidate for 2 NFL openings? Well, there's no more time to waste. So cue Mr. Anselmo, and let's start this show.
If you're looking for the latest scoop and in-depth interviews on the Saints, the NFL, the Pelicans, LSU, along with the best bets of the week, then lucky you. Along with high-powered, in-the-know guests who cover our teams, Jim Derry brings plenty of Dattitude. And he'll always tell you the way it is, or at least the way he thinks it is.
Where you at, Dattitude family? Are we really into the 3rd week of the year already? There's been so much. I mean, obviously, it's been a more news-heavy cycle than a sports-heavy cycle. And the sports cycle over the course of the past 2 weeks has been pretty darn thick. Oh, so much going on. Again, I know. Get off my lawn, dude. But, wow, a lot going on. Time flies when you're trying to figure out the future of your favorite NFL team, doesn't it? Are we closer to an answer? I think we'll have to ask our resident expert, Jeff Duncan, in just a few minutes. But first, let me tell you that this is Dattitude, episode number 333. That's a whole lot of threes. And we're presented by Evangeline Securities for a Wednesday, January the 15th. 15 divided by 5 is 3. 2025. I'm your host, Jim Derry, 34-plus years on the New Orleans sports media scene, and I thank you for being a part of our ever-growing Dattitude family. It has been, we had a wonderful, speaking of the first few weeks of the year, we have had, I don't know if it was our best 2 weeks of the year, of the year. I can't get anything right this morning. I don't know if it was our best 2 weeks ever that we've had to start this year, but it was certainly one of them. We had kind of a slow December. I guess you can only listen to the same crap so much, right? I totally get it, but for some reason it's picked up, man. We finished 2024 with over 940,000 views/listens. So, man, we were so close to the million. We're going to get it this year, right? You're going to help us be a part of getting Dattitude to 1 million views/listens in 2025, right? I know you are. The family is growing. We have already upped our average. We averaged about 7,300 or so viewers and listeners in 2024. We're out right now through the first 5 shows of the year. I think we're at we're like 90, 94, 9,500, somewhere around there. So keep it coming. We're going to keep doing our job here. Y'all keep coming back. We'll keep talking to you. Today's going to be a great show. We got clips from Mickey Loomis and his year-end press conference. I know it's not exactly what you wanted to hear. The surprise that you were hoping for didn't come. It wasn't going to come. I mean, we told you. Look, I still think, again, I think that his grip on this grip isn't the right word. I think that the end all, the buck stops here. I think that has lessened a little bit. I think there are going to be more voices being heard. Not that there weren't a lot of voices being heard before. And I guess in the grand scheme of things, the final decision will come with Mickey Loomis, or does it? Does the final decision come? I was on Eric Cash's show on Monday. Talked to Mike Detillier yesterday. I've been busy. And I'm not sure that maybe the final decision rests with Gayle Benson. Maybe we'll ask that of Jeff Duncan later on. Got so many questions. He's on for a limited time, by the way. He's going to come on about 11:20, and he's got to be gone by noon. So I have a whole list of things to ask him. Give me your comments now. We'll try to throw some of those in. When he comes on, we might not show as many comments as we normally show, but we will show some. Let's get to some of the ones we have already this morning. Rocky, good morning. Dattitude Nation, we're all here. UBN says that Quinn Ewers saw that Sam Darnold performance and says, yep, I'm declaring for the draft. I think we knew he was declaring for the draft. S. Callie's here. Good morning. Charles Mangus. I was right. Rams smash Vikings. Who's counting? Some guy of the three-man panel doubled up on the other dudes. That might be this guy. I don't know. Not that I'm bragging or anything. Good morning, Douglas Thornton. Welcome. Ray Barra's here. What's up, Who Dat Nation? Douglas, you're getting over. You can't wait to get on Loomis. Sounds like the problem, just like the problem he's sitting on. In denial. Major problem for the Saints. Yes and no. Yes and no. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. John Pace is here. Good morning. Good morning, Dattitude family. Cannon McGee. This man, Mickey, has for the second time saying, look past the results. That's a shame. What do you want him to say? Like, seriously. Now, I am with you to the point where I'm not a fan of people who don't take responsibility for what's happened in the past. So I hear you on that front, but what do you want him to come out and say? You want him to be Jim Mora? There's only so many Jim Moras in the world. We stunk. We sucked. I mean, do you want him to say that? That's not who he is. I might say that if I were in that position because that's who I am. That's not who he is. That's not who most general managers are. Just saying. Again, we're going to get to all this. Brian Cavitt's here. Good morning, Who Dats. Did I know that Loomis was a used car salesman in another life? Hell, maybe I was a used car salesman in another life. I've got car salesmen in my family. Could have been. I don't know. I don't know what the hell I was. Cannon also says Mickey's got to go. He's not going anywhere. I told you this already. He's not going anywhere until he wants to go somewhere. The only control that you have is to not pay for tickets and don't go to the game. And I guess in a way, in a very minuscule, small part, even smaller than buying 2 tickets out of 70,000, is to not watch him either. But you're not going to do that. Sean Hurst talking about Quinn Ewers should have stayed in college. Probably could have made more money in the portal, like Beck. He had to get out of there. I think Texas is ready to move on anyway, unless he, like you said, go into the portal. But he's going to be drafted in the first 2 rounds. We'll see, maybe even more than that. Mario Hernandez says, get Loomis out of here. So somebody go knock on his door and tell him to scram. He's not going anywhere. Mickey, and look, you think if you want me to say Mickey Loomis is going somewhere, you're watching the wrong show. He's not going anywhere. You want my opinion on whether he should go somewhere? I'm not sure at this point it would make a difference. Make him leave like they made Gruden leave. They made Gruden leave for a little bit different reason. Just a little bit of a different reason. Yeah, I'm not getting into that. If you don't know why John Gruden was forced to leave the Raiders, Google it. Which is exactly the reason why he's never going to be the Saints coach. Okay? John Pace says he doesn't understand the Mickey Loomis hate. Mickey helped bring us a championship. I tried to explain this to people. Let's see how our coaching hire goes. I'm on the fence. Okay? It's tough. And I'm not usually on the fence. I usually have a hard decision, right? I'm usually on one side or the other. This one, I'm on the fence. In so many ways, I feel like Mickey Loomis has earned the right to stay until he's ready to leave. There go the numbers. Boy, people didn't like when I said that. Woo! Took a big. I'm just telling you. But at the same time, I completely understand where you all are coming from. Not dissing anyone when you say when you say what you're saying, okay? I get where you're all coming from. I'm not saying I even disagree with you. I'm on the fence. I see both sides of it. But in the end, in reality, it doesn't matter what we think. What matters is when Mickey Loomis wants to leave or doesn't want to leave. And look, he made it clear in his press conference, he's 68, he feels good, he's got all his quote-unquote faculties. He said that. This is a quote. You can't force someone. Well, I mean, you can force someone to leave. I mean, Gayle could step in and say, you're gone. But she's not going to do that. I mean, one of the questions I told you that we're going to ask Jeff Duncan in about 8 minutes is, what happens when, well, we'll talk about succession plans. We'll talk about, is he part of the will? I mean, I don't know if Dunk knows the answer to that or not. What happens if Gayle Benson passes? I mean, she looks like she's in pretty darn good health, so I don't expect her to go anywhere for 10, 15, 20 years. Nor do I want her to. I've told you this before. Not to get off on a tangent, but who knows what happens to this team when she's not the owner anymore. I don't know. We'll see. Hemisphere. As a Saints fan, welcome to the Dattitude family. I think you're new, unless you change your name. As a Saints fan, I'm going to embrace the losing seasons till a change is made. Well, you're going to have a change. You're going to have a huge change at coach. The general manager, look, whoever this next coach is, here's something to look forward to. If you're really pissed at Mickey Loomis, okay, here's something to look forward to. Something to look forward to is that whoever the next coach is going to be, and I think, you know, we said 2-horse race. This is before I find out about McCarthy. We're going to show you. In fact, you know what? I'm going to show it. I'm going to put it up on the screen right now. The new odds. These are the odds as of this morning. You see that Aaron Glenn ticked up. He's now minus 225. Odds from betonline.ag. But Mike McCarthy, we knew would go into the number 2 slot. He's even money. So what do these numbers tell you? They tell you that the 2-horse race is Aaron Glenn and Mike McCarthy. And I think we told you that on Monday during the show when it happened. I think whoever the next coach is of the New Orleans Saints, that person is going to have a whole lot more say-so on personnel and draft decisions than Dennis Allen had. And that is a big deal. Tell you why in a minute. But okay, before Duncan comes on, before the rest of the show, I want to tell you first that you can be a part of the show, obviously, as many people have. If you're new to the show, you don't know. If you type in a comment, for the most part, it's going to get shown here. And whether you watch it on YouTube or Facebook, you can do that. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our Dattitude YouTube page, our ever-growing Dattitude YouTube page. I'm trying to get back to doing more shorts. I did one yesterday. We can make them longer now. So I think they're even better than they were before. We also have a TikTok page. You can check that out. You can get in touch with me on X at Jim Derry Jr. or via email at jderry@theadvocate.com. Before we get to Jeff Duncan, again, let me tell you about our friends at Evangeline Securities. Well, you will be happy that there's no change at the top. That's because Nick Braden and Ron Hemelt lead a company that is, well, actually functioning. And functioning well, I might add. They can help you decide if it's the right time to sell your family-run or privately held business. And just as importantly, they can figure out what that business is worth, because that's the number one question if you're even pondering moving on in life. If that's you or someone you know, then it sounds like it's time to reach out to Nick and Ron. They will start by scheduling a complimentary valuation from their offices either on Poydras Street or in Lafayette. If you live around New Orleans, of course, you drive to Poydras Street, see the Dome. Check out Nick and Ron. You'll be well informed to begin to make the decision on if you want to proceed. What happens after that? We'll fill you in more later in the show. In the meantime, you can check them out at www.evangelinesecurities.com. That was definitely one I wanted to show. Good morning, Kyle from Los Angeles. You're actually at the airport. Caribbean. Man, enjoy your vacation. You know you can still watch Dattitude from the Caribbean, Kyle. Richard Rodriguez says, isn't it going to be a hard sell to attract the coach with an aging roster and salary cap hell? I don't think so. I said this both yesterday and Monday on this show and again on Eric Asher show and yesterday on Mike Detillier show on WWL. I think the Saints' job is, the more I think about it, and I'm not just saying this, the more I think about it, I think the Saints' job is actually one of the better ones that's available. And I'm going to tell you why. First of all, this cap hell, this is the first time in quite a while, okay, that we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. After this year, the Saints' cap hell gets much better. But here's why, the number one reason why I think this job it's certainly better. I think it's no question better than the Raiders' job. I don't want anything to do with Jerry Jones if I'm a coach, so I think it's better than the Dallas job. Dallas is a cluster F. It's not getting any better. But like I said a few minutes ago, the next coach of this team will be also a pseudo GM, which is not something you're going to get somewhere else. Mike McCarthy or Aaron Glenn will have much more responsibility on deciding who's playing, who's being picked in the draft, all those things. That is certainly an attracting point. I think it is. I'll ask Duncan what he thinks in just a minute. So, no, I don't think it's going to be a hard sell. And let me tell you something. Aaron Glenn's going to decide between the Saints and Jets. I don't think there's any question there. As I mute this alert, didn't you hate group chats, by the way? Oh, don't get me started. So anyway, I think there's a lot to love about what's coming up. David Duke, good morning. Let's keep our heads and stay positive for what the future may hold. Look, I said this a million times. I know sometimes I'm Derry Downer, but in the offseason, as you're looking, when things haven't happened yet, you got to be positive. I'm not going to make the old joke about keep it positive, brother. And Mickey Loomis did say something about, he said keep it positive, and I'm like, oh, God, no. Please don't say that. I'm just saying that you do have to keep it positive right now. That's my opinion. Apathy turned on the Loomis press conference for a minute. Again, we're going to have clips of that coming up with Duncan, and then I'll get his reaction from the clips. When I learned he wasn't stepping aside, I turned it off. There isn't anything could have said that changed my opinion of him as a late. But here's the thing, though. It's not just him. You're not looking to change the opinion, okay? You're looking to find out what's going on with the future of this franchise. It doesn't matter whether you like someone. If they're in charge of your favorite franchise, he's talking about things that are the future of what's going on here. You don't have to like them to listen. I think it's important to listen. I don't know. I think you guys are overreact. You guys, and I haven't had any gals overreact yet. I'm sure they're back there. Ryan says as well that this coach will have a mile-long leash. There's no question about it. Just saying. Apathy says he just broke within 20 to 30 minutes ago that Dallas has interest in Jets former coach Roberts. Oh, yeah, so what? Or we know. I mean, look, there are going to be so many rumors going on. Again, towards the end of the show, after Duncan comes on, Gabe's going to come on. We're going to talk about I've got updated coaching odds, how we have here for the Saints. We're also going to have them for the other 4 teams that are looking for coaches right now. I'll let you know what they all are. And if you can't see the screen, Aaron Glenn, minus 225. That's higher than the minus 200. Or I guess odds you're not going to make as much money. Aaron Glenn, minus 225 to be the next coach of the Saints. Mike McCarthy at even money. After that, Joe Brady is next. He's dropped from even money to plus 500 now. I think the only way that Joe Brady gets the job is if Glenn or McCarthy don't want it. And the chances of that are slim, in my opinion. I would be very surprised at this point if it's not Glenn or McCarthy. And honestly, Glenn is rightfully so still the favorite. We could talk about Mike McCarthy later, and we will with Jeff Duncan, who's known Mike McCarthy for a long time. But I think that's the only way that someone other than those 2 guys get it, is if they don't want it or they get hired somewhere else. Then you got Kellen Moore and Cliff Kingsbury way behind the pack. Ray Barra thinks McCarthy would be the guy. I think McCarthy's only the guy if Glenn doesn't want the job. Stephen Richard, does the scouting staff stay or does it change at all? I don't see why the scouting staff would stay. I don't think the scouting staff is going to change at all. I mean, there's no reason to change. Well, I mean, you might think there's a reason to, but I can tell you the Saints don't think there's a reason to change the scouting staff. Now, we heard Mickey talk about where the assistant coaches are right now. They're kind of in limbo, right? They're waiting to find out what's going to happen. And it depends on if you hire Aaron Glenn, he may want to keep a lot of these offensive guys. He may. If you hire Mike McCarthy, he's an offensive coach, probably not going to keep any of them. All right, let's get to the expert as we bring in our friend Jeff Duncan. Duncan, it's been a while. How you doing, bud?
Doing good, JD. What's going on, bud?
I'm sure for you, just about everything is going on. It's a heck of a busy time, and I know you were obviously at Mickey's press conference on Monday, so we're gonna lead in with that, and just your overall thoughts right now on the state of this football team and where we stand here in the middle of January. Probably a week or two from finding out who the next coach is going to be.
Yeah, look, I thought what we heard from Mickey on Monday was exactly what we all expected. I mean, pretty predictable now. I mean, he's been doing this for over 2 decades. I think everybody kind of knows his method of operation. And I thought it was kind of classic Mickey Loomis, you know, pretty determined, defiant. I think those are the words I used in my column, and a tad delusional, if you want to use that word. I mean, Mickey, for better or worse, is always, he even admitted, he said he's a glass half full guy. I would argue sometimes he's glass 3/4 full because he definitely sees the bright side of things, even when people are down. I think he tries to stay even keel in the middle. So when things are going really well, he's also kind of Debbie Downer a little bit. So that's how Mickey operates. And for better or worse, that's what you've got if you're a Saints fan as the general manager. And I think he thinks he's thought this way for a while now. I've written this a bunch of times. He thinks this team is in better shape than maybe outside perception. And he was wrong a year ago when he said that. And we're going to find out, if he's wrong this time as well.
It's interesting you talk about that first. I pulled 3 clips from Monday's press conference. A couple of them have to do with what you personally asked him, but you talk about the glass half full. I have that clip here. I want to play it, and then we'll talk about it on the side. It's 1 minute and 8 seconds long.
Well, look, I'm positive. I'm glass half full at all times. I see a lot of things, even in a 5-12 season. I see a lot of things that were positive that we can build on. And so I'm on the side of, man, this thing can go the other direction pretty quickly. I think I'm still pretty patient. I understand that, look, the results are the results and you can't ignore the results, but you also have to look beyond the results sometimes and understand, the reasons behind the symptoms, and some are in our control, some aren't. And so, look, we have to do the best job we can with the things that are in our control, and we have to understand the things that aren't. And look, I know you guys, nobody wants to hear this, but this injury thing was a big deal this year, a really big deal. Prevented us from winning games, prevented us from being competitive in games. And so we have to get a handle on that, I think.
Here's the thing, though, Dung. I don't think that fans, 85-90% of the fans, and I get on fans sometimes for being too negative, but in this case, it's hard to be a glass half full kind of fan if you've watched your team decline every year since Sean Payton has left. And it's not just because of Dennis Allen. I mean, people now starting to blame Mickey Loomis, rightly or wrongly. I'm just saying that this team has continued to go downward, and the injuries are a problem that we'll get into in the offseason probably, but they keep happening as well. There's just so many things that keep happening with this team.
Yeah, I know Darren Rizzi referenced the injuries in his postseason press conference and, alluded to the fact that the San Francisco 49ers had a similar number and struggled as well. And that was a team that a lot of people thought would go to the Super Bowl. And that's a very valid point. I think the difference is the 49ers did go to the Super Bowl the year before and have had winning seasons. The Saints had no margin for error because they had squandered previous seasons where they were expected to win the NFC South division and didn't. And I think the better model to look at if you're a fan and certainly a critic is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, an organization that went through a very similar transition after a Hall of Fame quarterback left. They went all in to win a Super Bowl with Tom Brady and had a lot of veteran players, an aging roster very similar to the Saints, and have negotiated or navigated the post-Brady era much better than the Saints have the post-Breeze era. That's an organization that has a very good mix of veteran stars, sort of like the Saints, Levante David, Godwin, Mike Evans. That core is still there, but they've got a lot of young, talented guys where you look at that roster and you think, well, we got Bucky Irving and Yaya Diaby and a lot of young Zion McCollum. You feel good about the future. The Saints have really not done anything close to that, and they haven't won the division at all. Tampa's won 4 in a row. Right. So to me, that's a much better comparison, and that's why I think Saints fans are so frustrated, is because it wasn't just a one-off. The Saints fans are patient. Lord knows they've been patient the last 3 or 4 years, and they were all in again this year in the offseason because they were told, this thing would turn around, and it didn't. It actually went the other way. It went worse. So, of course, they're going to be frustrated. And you can't just use the one-year injury excuse because of the body of work before that. I think that's where they're losing touch with the fan base and are a little bit tone deaf.
I think you're right. And, it's understandable to go through and see why people are frustrated with Mickey. And it's not just all the things you talked about. We talk about the injuries, but the main 2 injuries, or you got Taysom Hill towards the end of the season, but Derek Carr missing 7 games this season are a big chunk and a big chunk of another game. So this team can't win without Derek Carr, but that goes to it all starting in the trenches and the player selection and Dunk not identifying the problems that this team has and not fixing those problems. They tried to fix them with Fuaga this year, and I thought he did a great job coming in as a rookie and playing. But the Saints still have one of the worst offensive lines in the National Football League, and their defensive line keeps regressing the last 3 years in a row. When are they going to realize that that's where their sole focus should be right now?
And here's one thing I would say. Look, I don't disagree with anything you say, but one thing I've learned over this 25 years covering the team is that often the players on the team, the talent on the team is better than is actually being manifested in the games, the results. So, when we talk about the drafts and Jeff Ireland, I'm a big Jeff Ireland believer. I know him pretty well.
I am too. Yep.
Yeah, I think he's very good. He's highly respected around the league. It's not his fault Trey Hendrickson and Zach Bond and Alex Anzalone are playing elsewhere and shining. He drafted those guys. That's his job. So my point is, I've seen it happen. I remember when Jim Haslett and Randy Mueller came in, they knew that offensive line the Saints had with Chris Naoli and Kyle Turley and Willie Rofe was good. And they knew they had a really good defensive line with, Joe Johnson and, Leroy Glover. And that thing turned around right away. And the team was 3-13 the year before, JD. So there was talent there. I guess that's what I'm saying is sometimes, it's easy to get confused because the results aren't on the field, but there could be better talent on this team than maybe what we're seeing because of the mismanagement, because of the circumstances around the players, because of, frankly, poor coaching. And that's something I think it goes beyond just Dennis Allen. I've said this before, probably more privately than publicly, but, one of the great strengths of Sean Payton was that he was able to attract very good coaches and hire very good coaches here. Just look around the league. I mean, Dan Campbell is leading Detroit with a lot of former Saints coaches on the staff. We see what Joe Brady's doing in Buffalo. Sean's got a lot of his coaches on his staff in Denver. They're successful. I think that was a big weakness of Dennis Allen. And look, it's not just Dennis Allen. A lot of guys get in that seat and have to hire a staff, and they realize there's a lot more to just coaching than just X's and O's. You got to put a staff together. And he couldn't put together a very good staff. He fired the entire defensive staff after his first year. And frankly, the staff he brought in after that wasn't as good. There's no what's the defensive line? I'm blanking on a defensive line coach that was there that ended up in Jacksonville.
Yeah. Maroon. No,
Ryan.
Oh yeah.
I can't believe I'm blanking.
Yeah,
anyway, point is
too.
The defensive line coach, I can't believe I can't remember this name. Anyway, he is by far better than anybody the Saints have brought in after that. Then they fired Pete Carmichael and the whole offensive staff. Those guys were thrown to the wolves after a year. I've always defended Pete Carmichael. I know a lot of people didn't.
I have not.
And all I'm saying is they scored fewer points this year and gained less yards.
I hear you.
Than with Pete Carmichael. I'm not saying Pete Carmichael didn't have faults. Don't get me wrong. I know that there were struggles there.
Ryan Nielsen.
Thank you, for Christ's sake.
Gabe said that.
So Pete Carmichael needed to improve on the running game. That was a disaster. There's no question. But a lot of that goes to the run game coordinator and Doug Marrone and that group. So, but anyway, my point is, Pete Carmichael got thrown to the wolves. He was a scapegoat, and now DA's the scapegoat. And so we're going to see if they can fix it. We're going to fix it right now. But I'm just saying, don't get caught up. It's easy to get kind of everything's wrong. And I think that's a little what Mickey Loomis was saying at his press conference. Like, not everything's wrong here. There's a lot wrong, but they're going to have to hit a home run on this head coach hire. Now, they did it with Sean Payton. Can they do it again? They failed miserably with Dennis Allen. He got a mulligan from the organization. We're going to find out if they can pull a rabbit out of their hat again.
There's a comment here that I want to show because it has to do with the next clip that I'm going to play, and a question that you and Mickey that Mickey responded to. It's actually our longest clip here, but Dylan Smith says Loomis challenging Dunk to a duel is the most hilarious thing he's seen all week. Obviously, that was a joke. Loomis saw the guns and said, "Accept the fight." Look, here's the clip, and it's about you talking basically. His whole thing, he's not thinking about retirement anytime soon. And we've said many times in the show, Mickey Loomis isn't going anywhere until Mickey Loomis wants to go somewhere. But here's what he said. A minute and 56 seconds. We'll talk about it on the other end.
Yeah. Look, I have a love for the community, right? A love for New Orleans. Wasn't originally from here, but I like to tell people I'm from here now. I know how much the success of our team impacts our city. So I take it personal when we're not successful. All of our guys take it personal. That's just part of, being in New Orleans. It kind of gets into your blood and gets into your soul. And so not having a successful season is painful. And so, look, I'm as determined as ever to let's get us back in the playoffs. Let's get us back on the right track here. And I think we can do that. I know I can do it. I know we can. Look, I got a passion for I've got a passion for the sport. I got a passion for the Saints. I got a passion for all of it. I feel like, look, I've got all my faculties here. The only nobody would ask me that question if I wasn't 68, right? They wouldn't ask me the question. Listen, you want to go out and challenge me to something? I'm ready to take you on, Jeff. Let's go. Not a fight. I'm not talking about that. I'm never been a great fighter, but if you want to play me golf, you want to play, if I ever felt like my acumen or my ability to think and ability to do the things necessary in this job were waning, I'd be the first guy to say, hey, wait a minute. So no, retirement's not on my mind.
I think he was talking about poker, Dunk. He wants to take you on in poker.
Yeah, that was a fun exchange. And it's classic Mickey. I would not have expected anything less from him. But I think we needed to get that out there because it's obviously a topic that a lot of fans have been discussing. And it's a relevant topic because Mickey is the longest tenured GM in the league. There's a reason general managers don't stay in one job for 20-something years. It just doesn't happen. It's happened, I think, a couple of times in history. But this is a different organization. I think that's why, it's frustrating for some fans. The blessing and curse, the pro and the con of this operation being run basically like a family operation is that it is insular. It is very tight-knit group at the top. And so when things are going well, that's fine. But when things aren't going well as they are right now, it becomes an issue. And I know they compare themselves often to the Pittsburgh Steelers and the stability and the continuity of the Steelers organization. And that is certainly an outlier in the NFL. They've had 3 head coaches in 6 decades in Pittsburgh. The difference is they've won 6 Lombardi trophies in Pittsburgh, and New Orleans hasn't. And for the most part, the organization has struggled, not been successful. So you can argue, and I think a lot of fans is that this was a product more of the Drew Brees, Sean Payton era more than anything else. Yeah. And, I think there's certainly open for criticism beyond that era.
Yeah, and I think a lot of things. I also read in your column you talked about, or I don't remember whether it was in your column or if you talked about it in the past week or so, but, people get upset when you see like the Zach Bonds of the world who go off and the Trey Hendricksons of the world. They go off somewhere else and they become all pros. And why couldn't we have kept them here? Hindsight's 2020. B, we don't really know with the cash scenario. You can dive into it, but the cash scenario, some of those players. So that's not all Mickey's fault. I mean, sometimes you realize, hey, I would love to keep this player, but it doesn't work out that way.
Yeah, and look, but it does remind me, though, to be honest with you, it reminds me a lot of the pre-Brees Payton days. It reminds me of times when we see Saints players go off somewhere else. That's what functional organizations do. They take another man's trash and make them into your treasure. Right. And the Saints were very good at that when Sean was here. If you remember, they bring in guys like David Patton, who's just a role player, and he'd have a role here and he'd be successful in it. They weren't asking him to do too much. Billy Miller, all those kind of guys I can think of, Scott Shanley and Fujita. They were veterans that played elsewhere, and they had a vision for them and plugged it in, and everything was successful. And now it's the opposite. Guys are having success elsewhere. That's, to me, a very bad sign. And it's a bigger picture problem. And that's why I say, I can remember distinctly a year ago, everybody thought Zach Bond was a bust. And it's not that he was a bust. He just wasn't being utilized right. And look, it's the organization's job to find out what players do well and put them in positions to be successful. That's the job. There's people, they have a whole department of, directors of pro personnel and pro scouts that's what they do. Their whole job is that. So, I just think this is a sign of a larger, kind of problem that's not being addressed. And, I don't think it's going to get solved, in my opinion, with just a head coaching hire. We'll see, but it's going to have to be a hell of a head coach, because what Sean Payton was really good at were a lot of things beyond the X's and O's, being involved in an organization, the big picture, the vision, a lot of the things that go into being a head coach in this league. It's a very difficult job, and especially in a smaller organization like this. That's why I think Mike Tomlin, Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, those guys were perfect for the Steelers. I think they got to find somebody similar to that here, and that's hard to find. That's why I thought Mike Vrabel would be good, because I think he has a lot of the same qualities that would make this successful. He did it in Nashville, in a very similar organization, kind of a little bit of wayward management there, and he was able to be successful in a small market. It's going to take a very powerful, that's why I say a type A kind of alpha personality to fit in those shoes, because as good a coach as I think Dennis Allen is, and I do think he's a good football coach. I think he knows, I just think he gets swallowed up. And I think Jim Haslett's a good coach. I know people would disagree, but I think he is. But they get swallowed up by the enormity of the job. There's an analogy I've heard before of like, Michael Phelps, the greatest swimmer of all time, but if you dump him in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, he's going to drown. The job's too big. So sometimes that can happen. And I think that's kind of what Mickey was alluding to the other day, if you read between the lines, where he said, I could have helped Dennis Allen more. I could have supported him in a better way. He didn't get into details, but I think he was getting into some of the things I'm seeing is that, they need help around. You need better infrastructure around the head coach to help him be successful.
Well, to go to your point, and the last point before we focus on the coaching search for the last 15, 20 minutes so that you're on with us here. By the way, Jeff Duncan here with us. If you're listening and can't see us, Jeff Duncan here on the Dattitude podcast this Wednesday morning, presented by Evangeline Security. But the point is that, you talk about the players that they've like whiffed on that they've never really whiffed on. Before, if they whiffed, it was rare. They didn't whiff very often. They did, but if they were bringing in a free agent, they didn't necessarily whiff. You talk about the Cedric Wilson has been so disappointing, in my opinion. Jamal Williams has done nothing here. Chase Young for $13 million. He was okay, but he wasn't worth $13 million. Even I know Willie Gay was banged up, but I expected so much more from him. And I just don't know if they were undercoached or they weren't analyzed properly, but it just goes to your point on so many players that this team has missed on in the recent past that's got to change.
Well, yeah, I mean, they pay Willie Gay what basically Philadelphia is paying Zach Bond. It's almost the exact same contract.
Right.
So that tells you a lot right there. You're bringing in a guy that the world champions cast aside, and you lost a guy you drafted, and now he's on a team that might go to the Super Bowl,
right,
and is all pro. Yeah, those are the managerial decisions that deserve criticism. And it's not just, everything can't just be – I think what happens when teams start struggling is we get very reductive. We want to just find one thing. It's got to be one person. We got to hang the noose around somebody's neck. And I alluded to that in my column the other day. First it was Pete Carmichael. It was his problem. Got to fix the offense. And then it was Dennis Allen, and now everybody's turned their crosshairs on Mickey Loomis, and it's bigger than all that. I just think this entire organization needs to be kind of shaken up, and I wish I could be a little more optimistic. I think that's possible if they hit on a head coach that could get them back over the hump. I mean, this team could be in the NFC South, the basically the Tampa Bay Bucks again of the South. But I don't see them ever be getting back to the 13-win seasons and the glory days of the Peyton Breeze era, unless they just, again, pull a rabbit out of their hat, because I just think it's so difficult to overcome some of the issues they've got there until, really big change happens.
When Jeff Duncan's being pessimistic, that's bad, y'all. I'm just saying. We got a comment. I want to move to the coaching search part of this and talk the rest of your segment here just about that. Michelle Castro Arreglado, Neesmith, a regular here, says, let's go Saints. Need a coach with NFL expertise that is armed and ready to go and motivate our players, respectful knowledge to rewire our players who can take us to the next level. Is there that coach? And, we put the odds on here. I think that it's, the other day I said it was a 2-horse race between Aaron Glenn and Joe Brady, but we went on the air right when it was announced that Mike McCarthy was not going to reach a contract with the Cowboys. So now I still think it's a 2-horse race, but now I think it's Glenn or McCarthy. I think my personal opinion is, knowing this team, Glenn is probably the favorite. I think that's probably who they want. You can tell me if you think that's the case. And then if they don't get him, I think they would go after Mike McCarthy. But I think either one of those guys would be a great hire. It could change the direction of this team. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think, 1A is Aaron Glenn, and Mike McCarthy would be what you'd fall back on if you can't get Aaron Glenn. The way I compare it, JD, is back in 2006 when they had a pool of candidates. If you remember, they interviewed Mike Sherman, Mike Martz, Donnie Henderson, Maurice Carthon, and Sean Payton. Now, look, I respect Mickey Loomis. He got to that point, but I could have picked out Sean Payton from that fivesome. Just sitting across the table from Sean doesn't take long to, pick him out. Having said that, he picked him out of that group. But I compare Mike McCarthy a little bit to Martz in that situation, right? You know what you're getting with Mike Martz back then. He'd been to the Super Bowl with the Rams, a prolific offense, he had skins on the wall. But Mickey did pick a rising, ascending assistant coach in Sean Payton. I think that's what Aaron Glenn is here. And if you think he can be your next Sean Payton and can lead the organization for another decade or so, certainly that's the direction I think you go with. But you know what you're getting in Mike McCarthy. So I think there's a known commodity there. There's an unknown element with Aaron Glenn. We don't know how he'll handle being in the head coaching seat, but I think it comes down to those two, with Joe Brady being kind of a wild card. Yeah. But I think a lot of Joe Brady, but Mickey likes familiarity. It's just a comfort level. I don't think he's alone in that. And I don't think it's a criticism either. I think there's a real strong belief in the building that they know what the formula is for winning. And that was established from Sean Payton during that, decade and a half. And I think they're just looking for like-minded people. And that makes sense. I mean, if you know what the formula is and you follow the formula and you've seen it work in Detroit, like he brought up, and it's working with Sean in Denver, then you want to find someone that's very similar, that has those same core beliefs. And it doesn't have to be from the tree, but it has to be someone that thinks the same way. And so it makes sense for them to find guys that they're familiar with.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And look, one thing, both of those guys, McCarthy and Aaron Glenn, you've covered this team for a long time. I'm guessing McCarthy probably a little bit more than yes. Aaron Glenn.
I like Mike, man. I know he's got a bad rap, man. Don't get on social media and form your judgments on people.
No, speaking of that, I want to throw something out there. I put something on X the other day, and I never got to say it on the show because I actually kind of said, let me just go compare him to Sean Payton and see what we got here. For all the haters of Mike McCarthy, and there are a lot of them out there. Again, I think you get Aaron Glenn or McCarthy and you're fine. But I want to compare. If you want to compare Mike McCarthy to Sean Payton, Dunk, here you go. They were born 6 weeks apart. Okay, Mike McCarthy is 6 weeks older than Sean Payton. McCarthy's record, and I meant to make a slide for this, but I ran out of time. 174, 112, and 2 in 18 seasons. Sean Payton is 170 and 105 in 17 seasons. Mike McCarthy has 11 seasons with double-digit victories. Sean Payton has 10. McCarthy is 11-11 in the playoffs. Payton is 9-9 in the playoffs. McCarthy has 4 NFC title games. Sean Payton has 3, and they each have a Super Bowl. They're the same coach.
Yes, he's got a very bad reputation in social media circles. Who cares? I mean, there's people on social media right now thinking they could get these LA fires put out better than the guys out there fighting
right.
the fires underground. Give me a break. Mike is well respected in NFL circles. He's well respected by the people in the Saints operation. And there's a reason for that. He's really good. You don't win 12 games and 10 games in this league and not be good at what you do. And I think one of the things that he got a bad rap for, I knew it at the time, but I know Mike well enough, he's always going to take the high road, is how he managed Aaron Rodgers. Well, I think we're all finding out in the league, Aaron Rodgers is a difficult guy to coach. He's a difficult guy to manage, and we're finding that out now. But back then, everybody thought Mike McCarthy was terrible because he couldn't handle Aaron Rodgers. I think he doesn't get enough credit for developing Aaron Rodgers. I mean, people act like Aaron Rodgers came into the league as a superstar. He was 21st pick in the draft or something. A lot of people pass on Aaron Rodgers. He was at a junior college, for Christ's sake, at one point. So Mike developed him, and Aaron Rodgers always gives him credit. And I think it's no coincidence that Dak Prescott played his best football under Mike McCarthy. He's one of the best quarterback coaches in the league, and everyone knows that. He's a very smart guy. Look, it's easy, JD, in this day and age to pick on the old chubby white guy. It's, you know what I mean? That's social media. Social media. That's what it's made for, right? He doesn't look as slick as Sean McVay on the sidelines. Mike McCarthy is a really good coach. He's old school, and I think to some degree he needs to get better. And I think he's tried. He's gotten into more analytics. I think there's some things he needs to improve on, but he's definitely knows how to run a football operation and would definitely be a home run hire. But I just think at some point they might want to take a chance on Aaron Glenn and think he could be the guy on the way up. And so I would probably lean more toward AG than Mike, but they could do worse than Mike McCarthy.
I'm just going to say, if you could turn Aaron Brooks into an NFL quarterback, then you've got to be a pretty darn good
Go look at Aaron Brooks'
coach.
Numbers after Mike left for San Francisco.
Absolutely.
Just look at it. There's a reason for that.
Absolutely. I do want to talk about Aaron Glenn next, and I got one more clip of Mickey that I want to play before you leave. But, talk about Aaron Glenn. He's never had that head coaching experience, but I didn't realize this until I went and looked last week. I didn't realize he was 52 years old. It just goes to show that you can have just because you've never been a head coach before doesn't mean you don't have a ton of experience. And Aaron Glenn, he was up for this job the last time we're looking for a coach, and he could have easily got the job just as well as Dennis Allen got it. I think it probably was out of those two guys. Aaron Glenn has shown what he can do with the defense, and you know what? He deserves a chance to be a head coach, and wherever he goes, whether it's the Jets or the Saints, I think he's going to make an excellent head coach.
Yeah, look, the thing I like about him, and I admit it, look, the guys on the Saints Insider podcast make fun of me all the time. I'm like somehow become the butt of everybody's jokes on that podcast, but they make fun of me because I'm a total Parcells disciple. And that's what Aaron Glenn is. And I believe in those guys. I mean, Dan Campbell's Parcells guy, Rizzi's a Parcells guy. There's a reason that guy's in the Hall of Fame.
Sean Payton.
Yes, Sean Payton. I mean, there's a reason because that guy knows how to win and he knows what it takes. And I think Aaron Glenn not only played for Parcells, he coached under him. So that formula for winning doesn't go away over time. It's tried and true in this league. And I think, look, we have no idea if he'll be successful in that seat. I think you have to be in it to really know how to manage it, but he's got a lot of skins on the wall with a lot of good coaches over the years. And what he did this past year in Detroit with all the injuries, I use that I brought it up all the time because people were bringing up the Saints, and I bring up the Lions, who had, I think at one point had 7 defensive starters, out, and they still managed to keep rolling. You have to manage that. And I thought he did a marvelous job of that.
We'll never make fun of you here, Jeff Duncan, on the show. I can't say that. We probably have. CC Broom says, wants to know, what is Aaron Glenn like in terms of personality? Is he assertive and self-confident?
Yes, that's one of his strengths. I mean, you don't play cornerback in this league as long as he did and not have that kind of fearless attitude. Now, whether he's willing to take guys behind closed doors and, chew them out, I think he will, but I don't know that 100%. But I know that was one of Sean Payton's big strengths. That's what Dan Campbell's really good at. Dan Campbell used to tell me that about Sean. He said, like, look, it's hard to take your star defensive tackle or whatever he's hypothetically speaking here and tell them they're not giving full effort and practice on that Wednesday and get into them to their face across the desk. You'd be surprised how many head coaches in this league won't do it. And I think, frankly, that was one of DA's weak spots. That was one of his blind spots. He couldn't do it. He tried to do it, wasn't in his personality. And I think you have to do that. If you listen to Tyrann Mathieu talk sometimes, you have to read between the lines on a veteran guy like him. He'll say things like, sometimes guys need to be called out. They have to be held accountable. If you don't, it's like dealing with school children. These guys are making millions of dollars and they're in their 20s. You know what I mean? You have to be able to ride herd, because if you don't, they will cross the line. That was basically the gist of my parking lot column, if you remember back in the season. Yep. It starts out as a trickle and ends up everyone's parking in the wrong parking lot.
Exactly.
It's just a symbol of the lack of discipline that I think carried over to game days, and you saw it on the field with penalties and blown assignments, and that's what I'm getting at. And so I think your question is valid. Will he do it? I don't know 100%, but I've heard really good things about him in that department.
You can't be a come on guys kind of. That doesn't work in the NFL. That just doesn't work.
Can't be a buddy. Doesn't work. I mean, you've got to be a disciplinarian. That's why I always, and look, we're veering off here, but why I always defend Brian Kelly. Everybody gets all over him. There's like, oh, he's yelling at players on the sidelines.
Oh, don't get me started. We've had that discussion.
I know, but I'm just telling you what matters in that exchange is between those two people.
Amen.
As long as they're okay, as long as Garrett Nussmeier knows that Brian Kelly cares about him and is coaching him hard and their relationship is fine, it doesn't matter what it looks like to the world. That doesn't matter. What matters is the relationship they have. And I'm sure Brian Kelly has a good relationship with Garrett Nussmeier and knows what buttons to push because he's in the building with him every day, and we're not. So, I've talked to I'm blue in the face about that. Sean Payton and Bo Nix got into it earlier this year. Sean Payton and Bo Nix have a great relationship. That's called coaching hard. And we saw
what kind of shoes you got on, Duncan? What kind of shoes you got on? I knew you had the wrong cleats on.
Yeah, Darren Rizzi was all over the punter, Hable this year. I mean, it happens. That's not the only way to lead, too, just jumping on a guy on the sidelines. I mean, you have to do it behind closed doors. You have to do it in practice. You have to do it. You have to lead. You have to be consistent with it, too. It can't be fake. I mean, these players are the first ones to know when you're not authentic. So they've got to get – and I think AG is the exact kind of guy. He's got skins on the wall. He was a great player in this league. He's coached under great coaches. I see why they're interested in him, and I would have to say he's the leader in the clubhouse. But I would say this. I mean, we're early in the process here. I think everyone's just speculating right now. One thing I know about Mickey Loomis, he doesn't talk to anybody, man, about big picture things like this. When he's making a big decision, He's not on the phone with national media guys. I mean, Peyton would do that. Mickey doesn't do that. So you're just getting a lot of ancillary reporting, and that's probably coming from the agents of the coaches involved. They're getting feedback, but no one truly knows. I'm telling you, because Mickey just doesn't work that way.
One more clip and 2 more questions before we let you go. I want to get to them. I know there's a lot of comments in the queue. I'm going to get to them after Dunk goes off with them because we only have 5 more minutes with him this morning. But this clip is 1 minute, 26 seconds long about Mickey talking. Hey, look, like kind of what you said. He's not going to tip his hand when it comes to who's being selected. And he's had plenty of talks with Mr. Gayle about what's going on. She's not happy either. They're going to try to do their best to make the right decision.
We just want the best coach possible. And it's like I said, all of these candidates, all of them, they have strengths and weaknesses. And so I don't want to put, anything into a box and say it's got to be this. I mean, half are offensive coordinators, so the other half are defensive coordinators and special teams coordinators, right? So, that's the candidate pool. You're looking at the best coaches available, and obviously they're going to have an expertise on one side of the ball or the other, or a special teams candidate. And so that's the pool. We did it 3 years ago, right? But we hadn't done it for however many years before that. It was a long time between times. So you learn something from it. No one wants to win and be successful more than I do. We all do. That's the way everybody in our building feels like. Well, I mean, she's like the rest of us, disappointed, frustrated. Wants the team to be successful. So she's been nothing but supportive and encouraging, and able to provide as many resources as we need to get the best coach we can get. So she's a big positive when the question comes up about why is this job attractive.
Gayle Benson loves Mickey Loomis, doesn't she?
Yeah, I detailed that in my column. I mean, I've said this before. I mean, Dennis Lauscha, the president of the team, on the business side of the operation, and Mickey Loomis in charge of the football operation are the 2 most secure, powerful people in the building. And they're not going anywhere, man, unless they want to retire or they want to move on. It's going to be up to them. I mean, she's very loyal to those around her in that tight-knit inner circle of management. And Mickey Loomis is certainly highly regarded by her.
Last question in 1 minute or less, if you can do it. This is a hard question to answer in 1 minute. But I had a reader ask me last week and wanted me to ask you when you came on. What happens? I don't think she's going anywhere anytime soon. She's in great health. But what happens to this football team if Gayle Benson were to pass away?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we wrote about that, and you can Google that online. Just Google succession plan Saints, NOLA.com, and you can read in detail what happens because it's still online. But I'll tell you in Cliff Notes version, basically when she passes away, the team will go into a trust that will be managed and operated by the executives of the New Orleans Saints, led by Dennis Lauscha. Mickey Loomis will be involved in that, and the team will be sold. It's very similar to what happened with the Denver Broncos with Pat Bowlen. When he passed away, family was involved with the trust, but the team was sold to the Walmart heirs, and that's what will be done here. And you can write into the sale of the team, that the team has to be kept here and things like that. But the thing that is going on right now with the state of Louisiana is they're negotiating a long-term deal, a long-term lease agreement with the New Orleans Saints that will extend beyond Gayle Benson's probably life, and probably the life or tenure of all the managers with the building is probably going to go out 30 years. And in the workings of that contract are going to be stipulations that this team stays here, and there will be penalties, hundreds of millions of dollars to anybody. It's called a relocation penalty. If some new owner, which was going to happen here in probably a decade or so, takes over the team, that they would have to pay if they tried to move the team. It'd be $600 million, just throwing a number out. But that's very common in the NFL. It happened with the Buffalo Bills. It's certainly written into standard contracts around the NFL. So I think that fear, I've never felt like that's a valid fear, because the NFL, I've told this story before, JD, the NFL wants a team in New Orleans. I know people don't believe that sometimes because of the conspiracy theorists out there, but the NFL executive told me a long time ago, if you took New Orleans off the NFL map, you would have a vast wasteland between Houston and Dallas and Atlanta, and that's arguably the most football passionate part of our entire country. I mean, it's the SEC West, basically, right? That area, New Orleans, Birmingham, the Gulf Coast, leads Nielsen ratings every year in football watching, not just NFL, but college football, all of it. That's the most passionate football area of the country. They're not going to abandon the Gulf Coast. Where are they going to move? That's going to have that kind of passion and that kind of interest. So I think that fear is largely unfounded. I get why it's there, because decades ago,
I have it.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. I mean, it's not. There's too much passion here for a team. There's too much. Now, you can question some of the local government leadership and things like that haven't made things easy. But the NFL has a much bigger picture view of New Orleans than LaToya Cantrell or the governor right now, Landry. But I will say this: Governor Landry and his staff are doing a good job, I think, of negotiating this deal. And Tyler Bridges, my colleague, and I are working on a story on this. So look for that coming up in the next few weeks before the Super Bowl, about where that contract stands and what it means for this franchise, because I think it's a very underreported story right now. The long-term future of the Saints are going to be tied into this contract that could go out 30 years in securing this franchise in New Orleans beyond Gayle Benson's ownership.
Yeah, well, this is definitely something that we could spend a whole show on. And honestly, in the late spring or the summer, if you have time, I would love to talk about this at an extended rate, because more about this. You've been involved over the past 2 decades in all this talk, and I would love to spend time talking on you. I know you got to go. Real quick, who's coming to New Orleans for the Super Bowl?
What do you mean? Oh, the teams?
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's beating fighting Dan Campbell's. I mean, I think they're going to win.
I completely disagree.
Yeah, I'm all over the Lions now. I don't know the AFC. I think it's one of 3 teams: the Chiefs, the Bills, or the Ravens. It's a very, it's interesting, JD. It's a very top-heavy year. There wasn't a lot of parity in the NFL this year. It was very top-heavy. There was clear elite teams, and then not a big middle class. A lot of bad teams. And I think I just think the Lions are on kind of.
I think Dan Campbell's going to screw it up some kind of way.
No, that's a possibility. I won't argue there, but it feels like that magic carpet ride the Saints were on. They're going to be very difficult to beat in Detroit. I mean, the environment. I've talked to my colleagues that've gone to those games. I mean, that franchise has never even been to the Super Bowl.
It would be crazy. New Orleans would be even more nuts than usual. It would be nuts.
Off the hook. And I think the Ravens. For once, might get over the hump with Lamar Jackson, just because of the addition of Derrick Henry. That's huge, man. I just feel like they're so well coached. But any of those 3 teams, Buffalo, Baltimore, or the Chiefs against Detroit, to me, would be an incredible Super Bowl.
Gabe and I always talk about you can't bet against God, and until Patrick Mahomes loses, I ain't betting against him. We'll say. All right, Dunk, I would love to talk to you before the Super Bowl at some point. Have a great few weeks. It's going to be crazy for all of us the next 4 weeks or so. Let's enjoy it.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon, Dunk. Great Jeff Duncan, everybody. I didn't mean to put that slide. I meant to put this one on. We got a few more. Gabe, I got 51 comments since I last looked, so there must be a ton of them. Any? No? Okay. Talking to each other. There were a couple that I definitely wanted to show from before Dunk, before I went into that last little, where is it? I gotta go back here. And Swing Arm says he wants McCarthy for a head coach. I like Glenn, but don't want a DC for a head coach. Any coach should get a pass in the next few years if they clean the cap issues. I think they're going to. I think there's no doubt. Linda, Joe Brady is a better choice than Aaron Glenn and Mike McCarthy. Maybe in your opinion, but he's not going to be the coach unless Aaron Glenn and Mike McCarthy doesn't want the job. I can tell you right now, that's the way it's going to be. Michelle says, I'm warming to AJ. Look, I've never been that much against him. when I talk about not requirements, guidelines, I guess I've given up on my guidelines. Okay. I know one of my guidelines, and the number one guideline for me was someone that's not a retread. Aaron Glenn's not a retread, but I also want someone that's never been a part of this organization. That's not going to happen. Any one of those three top guys have all been a part of this organization. I've accepted that. That's going to happen. Mike McCarthy is a retread. But when you look at, after I did the comparison to Sean Payton, you literally cannot like Sean Payton and not like McCarthy. They are the same coach. You may not think so, and I know so many people don't want Mike McCarthy, and I get it, okay? But you can't not like Mike McCarthy if you like Sean Payton. It is. That's where we are. Adam Varner wants Mike McCarthy. He says he's a good coach. He likes Glenn and Brady, but Mike is solid. Lots to talk about Spencer Rattler that we're definitely, absolutely not getting into this morning. We're going to talk to Gabe in a minute about what's going on this weekend. Let's see what else we got. Brian, a good point. If it's McCarthy, Carr will throw for 4,000 yards and have 30-plus touchdowns. I agree. I at 100% agree. They still need interior O-line help. No question about it. And you're not calling out Penning. You're not calling out Penning because, look, I think you're kind of in a situation to where Penning has to be the right tackle next year. I don't think you're in a situation you can't clean up everything along the offensive line. So at this point, I'd kind of like to see the Saints go for guard. That's not a sexy pick, especially not in the first round, but you need a left guard more than you need. To me, that is if you're looking for a position where you need help more than anything, I think it's left guard. That's my opinion. Trying to look for a few more others here. Again, a lot of these are people talking to each other here. Let's see. Kyle Sherman says, Miss Gayle going to be around for many more years, praying for it. Lance, long live Miss Gayle. See, I know what Dunk says and that they're not going anywhere anytime soon. Just don't trust it. He talks about the penalties that a city would have to pay or a state would have to pay if they wanted to, quote unquote, I guess, steal the Saints. If something happened to Miss Gayle and they went into this trust, what happens if someone in Alabama wants to put a team in Birmingham? Because obviously much smaller scale, but Birmingham is got to be either the next city to get an NFL team or up there, one of the next cities to get an NFL team. What happens if some rich dude or rich lady or group of people gets together and says, we want to put a team in Birmingham, and they're willing to pay a $600 million fee? Gabe says there's no such thing as rich in Birmingham. Doesn't matter. You're missing the point. Doesn't mean there's not someone rich in that vicinity who wants to buy a team, and Birmingham is closer to where they are. Could be someone in southern Tennessee. Could be someone in Georgia. It just scares the hell out of me. I'm just saying. Lots of things going on in the coaching search. We're going to talk about it Friday again. Larry cannot be on the show on Friday because he's got something going on with his son. However, we've got Doug Mouton. So Friday will be a lot of fun with Doug Mouton as we talk more about the coaching search. I mean, what else are we going to talk about this time? Obviously, we're also going to preview the games. Gabe and UBN are going to come on the show on UBN, and we're going to continue our contest. They're going to have to get on fire. Nah, I'm just kidding. It's not going to be that hard to catch them in that far ahead. But I'm interested to hear what they have to say, because we're going to, you know what? I'm going to click this slide here before we get to Gabe, because some of these lines I think are absurd. Do you see both the Texans, Chiefs, and the Commanders, Lions lines have been bet on to where they've gone up a point in favor of the favorite? I thought they were too high before. Now it's going to make it tough to pick. The Ravens line has not changed, and the Rams have come out a 6-point underdog at Philly. I think Dunk is not giving Philly enough credit. Maybe not giving the Rams enough credit. I don't necessarily think it's a one-horse race in the NFC. We're going to find out pretty soon. Mal says they will make an expansion team. No, I don't think if the NFL expands again anytime soon in my lifetime, it'll be in Europe or abroad somewhere, or Mexico or something. It won't be in this country. They're not gonna. And if you ask, by the way, ask me if I'm a pessimistic in every aspect of life. Absolutely not. I'm one of the most optimistic people there are. I'm realist. I'm a realist, dude. I've seen things happen. I have 56 years of experience of realism. I'm not going to tell you the glass is half full when it ain't half full. Okay. I'm not going to tell you it's half empty when it ain't half empty. I mean, y'all don't like when I'm positive about Loomis, but you hate when I'm negative about something else. I mean, it is what it is. Jay Tucker Rafferty says the NFL wants to put teams overseas. That's the next goal. That is the word. There's no question about it. No question about it. And lastly, before we get to Gabe here, Saints, since the Saints are in a salary cap, William asked, why not extend Carr for 3 years, which would help the cap and give the Saints time to find a replacement? Because the next coach has the right to pick who he wants as his quarterback. That's why. There's no bigger defender of Derek Carr, Mr. Negative. There's no bigger defender of Carr than me. I think Derek Carr, I've said this 100 times in this show, he gets blamed for way too much crap. That being said, he's not the long-term solution for this franchise. I think this franchise needs something that is going to last for 10 years. They need 10 years. They need their Jaden Daniels, their CJ Stroud. Who else do we go down the list? They got to pick the right one, though. And whoever the next coach is deserves to be able to pick the next coach. That's my opinion. Douglas Thornton says he's taken Jaden Daniels and the Commanders over the Lions. Jaden keeps showing me something he's battle tested thus far. Wouldn't shock me. Wouldn't shock me if Jaden Daniels won, but man, 9.5 points. I'm certainly not going to take that money line. I think Detroit cruises into the NFC. I think that the Commanders winning and making it so they play Washington instead of the Rams is a big deal. The Rams, I think, could have given the Lions a lot of trouble. They already have. Commanders, I don't think so. And you go to the coaching, and you know how I dog on Dan Campbell. I'm not going to dog on Dan Campbell in this one because I think he's a better coach than I think Dan Quinn is not good. Gabe's made fun of me for saying awful. So I won't say awful. Say Dan Quinn's not good. 28-3. I think they've won despite Dan Quinn, the Commanders. They won because of Jaden Daniels, my opinion. Chad Gage wants to get a top-notch tight end in the draft. That would help quarterback and take pressure off the wide receivers. Not early. You can't do it. You can't take a top-notch tight end. You've got to build in the trenches. It's got to be an offensive lineman. If it's a defensive lineman, I'm going to go, okay. But if it's anything other than an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman or trade the pick or Genty, those are your four options, then they should all be fired. I mean, some of you think they should all be fired anyway. If they do anything other than those four options, offensive line, defensive line, trade down, or get Genty, then that's ridiculous. We're going to do plenty of talking about that. Yeah, I like y'all saying. Oh, see, I told you about Sam Darnold. I said Sam Darnold sucks in August, even when they were winning. September, October. Sam Darnold sucks. I don't care that he won 14 games. He sucks. He did not exactly. He did a similar thing when he went to Carolina. Remember Carolina a couple years ago when they had Darnold? They started the season hot. They won 6 or 7 games, and then he turned back into Sam Darnold. Yeah, he sucks. The Rams defense, though, is pretty good. You want to talk about great drafting. How about that defense? It's all young guys that the Rams drafted. Fantastic. Sean says, Dan versus Dan, full Madden edition. I don't think the kickers they can stay home in this one. They can take a nap. They're not going to kick. Going to go for 2. They're going to go for it on 4th and 8 from the 50. Douglas wants to give another shout out to the Lady Tigers. Nation's longest winning streak. They are 19-0. Shout out. It's Floget's world. We're all just living in it. All right, time to bring in Gabe, and I know he's got plenty to say this morning. We're going to talk about a few things here. Actually, before I get to Gabe, real quick, we told you earlier we would let you know more about how Evangeline Securities can help you figure out what your family-run or privately held business might be worth and whether it's time to sell, and why they've got everything running smoothly. There's one organization on Port Street that can get things done. How do they do it? Well, after their complimentary valuation of your company, if you decide to proceed, native New Orleanians Nick Braden, Ron Hemelt, and the folks at Evangeline will begin an extensive auction process from established private equity funds from around the world. And they will maximize the return process for the founder and his or her family. Evangeline Securities is the top producer on their platform. There are very few companies like them in this area, and none with their dedication and success. None. Nada. They are fully licensed and ready to serve you. So get in touch with Nick and Ron about what's really important. It ain't the fighting Dans. It ain't who's going to win this weekend. It ain't who's coming to New Orleans for the Super Bowl. What is really important is the rest of your life. You can find them at www.evangelinesecurities.com. It's time for Wednesdays with Gabe.
Yeah,
man, everybody's talking to themselves. JJ, shout out. What's going on? Let's see what else we got. Sean said Darnold turned into a pumpkin. No doubt about it. Anyway, lots of people talking to each other this morning. What's up, Gabe?
Nothing. I did just get a breaking news report on my phone that apparently the New York Post is saying, and Bleacher Report is doubling down on, the Jets are Aaron Glenn's number one choice if he were to be offered. So if that's the case,
well, there you go.
Mike McCarthy.
I think it's one of the two. Look,
yeah,
if for anything else, Saints are. We've seen this so many times before. They like familiarity, right? They know Mike McCarthy, Mickey Loomis, and Dennis Lauscha, and everyone else in the building, for the most part, knows Mike McCarthy because he worked here for a while and he left here to go be a head coach. So I think if it's not Aaron Glenn, it's McCarthy.
Yeah, and I know you touched on this earlier, and I said I wanted to talk about it. Sean, I'm glad he brought this up. We need to talk about this.
Okay, talk about it.
It says the Saints' job.
We haven't had a disagreement in a while. Go ahead.
Because of the stability up top. I think the Saints' job might be the least attractive of all of the ones.
Oh God, no. Absolutely, there is no job worse in football. And it's not even debate. If you want to debate this, then you should go feed birds in the park.
What you got
on Sunday? There is no job worse than the Las Vegas Raiders. Period.
I disagree.
They are a cluster F. They're never going to be anything but a cluster F. They're in a division where they can't win. They have no quarterback. They don't even really. Who knows who they're going to get at quarterback? Other than Max Crosby, they're not good in the trenches. They have a fantastic tight end, but that's great. No one can throw it to them. They don't have a running game. They stink. And they have an owner who's a dumbass. There you go.
A lot of the things that you said ring true with the Saints as well.
I don't agree with that at all. But anyway.
They don't have a quarterback.
By the way, here's a shout out. Kyle Sherman says, Evangeline is strong in the trenches. You bet your sweet bippy they are. Go ahead.
Here's the thing.
They don't have a quarterback. They have one of the top 12 quarterbacks in the NFL, unquestionably.
For one more year. And it's a rebuild year, so what does it matter?
Who cares? Then they'll go out and get the quarterbacks that they want.
I mean, you've long said it. The future of the quarterback position is not on this roster.
If you tell me, and I'm not saying either one will or won't, I'm saying that there's a chance. If you tell me which team is going to get in the playoffs next first, I think I would give you 4-1 odds that it's the Saints over the Raiders.
That's because they play in the weakest division.
I don't give a damn why. I'm just telling you. I don't want to watch this crap anymore.
But that doesn't make the job more desirable.
Absolutely. The whole gig, the whole
okay,
deal is to go to the
thing,
playoffs.
Jim.
What do you
might
want
not
to do?
agree with me, but you know who agrees with me about the job being more attractive? Ben Johnson, probably the most coveted candidate who is going to take that job.
Good for him. And guess what? 3 years from now, he'll be looking for another job, just like what's his name, who's going back to the Patriots as offensive coordinator. What the hell's his name? Josh McDaniel.
Well, here's the difference with the Raiders this time around. And I think this is why they're fully in on Ben Johnson and why I think Tom Brady, not only is he now in the building, and I do think that was a good idea because Mark Davis has no idea what he's doing. I think he's shown that. So he now gets a guy in. They just fired their GM after 1 year. Do you know why? Because Ben Johnson wants transparency from the top to the bottom, and they're going to give it to him. So not only do you get to work with your choice of GM, they're going to give him a choice at multiple players.
Who cares? What says that Tom Brady is going to be successful at this? I mean, we've seen Drew Brees.
Tom Brady's been more successful than
as a quarterback, not as anything else.
That's fine.
Only successful as a quarterback. Tom Brady ain't jack crap when it comes. You're going to tell me Tom Brady's going to come in and be a GM now?
No, I'm just saying he's helping the Raiders bring in the most coveted coaching candidate of this cycle.
Enjoy that. The Raiders are a mess.
And not only that, they have the second most cap space in the league. They're one of the youngest teams in the league.
You don't know how to spend it. Who cares?
Who says they don't know how to spend it?
I do. They haven't known how to spend money over the past 4 years. They kept an interim coach who wasn't very good. They wasted an entire year in trying to rebuild.
So they've now kicked all of those guys to the curb. They're getting a new GM. They're getting a new coach, which means they've got a new draft strategy.
Realizing they suck.
They've got money.
They finally realized they suck. That's good. I mean,
you realize you're talking about the Saints here too, right? I mean, everything you're saying echoes
at least
with
Mickey
the Saints.
Loomis has won a Super Bowl as a GM. Tom Brady hasn't done jack as a GM. Basically, that's what you're telling me he's going to be.
Okay, I guarantee
besides the Raiders, you want to talk about a team that's also a cluster F and isn't going anywhere anytime soon, and that's the Chicago Bears. I'd rather be the Saints.
They have a quarterback of the future.
Their quarterback sucks. He's terrible. They had a quarterback that was better than this quarterback. Justin Fields was better than Caleb Williams. Yes, they did.
Really? Because one's rotting on the bench, not wanted by any team.
Whose fault is that? That's not his fault.
Justin Fields.
Look, Justin Fields is better than Russ, and he's better.
No, he's not.
Caleb Williams is horrendous, dude. What will you watch this year?
No, he's not.
Okay, well, he's
Caleb Williams was the second best rookie quarterback this year.
Okay, who was good though? I think Drake May was better than him, actually.
Drake May didn't play enough to be
definitely better. There's no question.
I think if you tell me here's where I'll agree with you there. If you tell me Drake May will have a better career than Caleb Williams, I'll probably agree with you. But we can't sit here and use the offensive line excuse for the Saints quarterbacks all season and then point at Caleb Williams, who I believe is the most sacked quarterback all year.
Caleb Williams. I haven't made the offensive line excuse once for anyone.
Say what you will about Caleb Williams. He got a lot better as the season went on.
I'm just saying, I haven't made the offensive line as an excuse for anybody.
No, but everyone has said that in defending Derek Carr and defending Spencer Rattler, everyone always pulls out if they had a healthy offensive line, if they had a better offensive line.
I wasn't making excuses.
Offensive line matters. Excuse maybe wasn't a right word. Context.
No, I hear you.
I think the Bears, they have a way more talented roster than the Saints.
I wouldn't make an excuse for Derek Carr. I wouldn't make an excuse for the Rat either. Go ahead.
Put it this way. The only thing that this Saints job offers in terms of a promising pitch to coaches is stability. You will get your shot here. You'll get a few years.
No, it's not just stability. It's the fact that you're going to have more control than any other place. Any of the places that are available to go. And, absolutely. You will have more control over what person. You think the coach of the Raiders is going to have control over player personnel? Absolutely not. You're talking about, you think Tom Brady is going to give control of anything to anybody, and that idiot owner of Al Davis who never gave control? The cherry doesn't fall far from the cherry tree. The acorn.
They're gonna get Ben Johnson as guys when he goes there.
No way.
With the cap money they have, yeah. I bet you they will.
I bet you they won't. He'll have input, but it's going to be Brady and it's going to be the owner, because that's the way they're going to want it to be. And whoever comes in here, that's Loomis's MO. One thing about Loomis is, and you can like it or don't like it, but he wants the coach to have a big time say. He didn't trust Allen enough to give him enough say, whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing. Probably the right thing. I don't know. I mean, hindsight's 20/20. Probably should have never hired Dennis Allen. But I'm not going to say that, because I was in Dennis Allen's corner 3 years ago, so I'm not going to be a hypocrite. But you go back to that time, Sean Payton had complete control over what personnel came into this building. Sean Payton was making the decision on, we need to trade up. You think those trading up all the time was because of Mickey Loomis? No, it was because of Sean Payton. Were they the right choices? Most of the time they weren't. I'm just saying that the next coach, that's another reason why it's more attractive, in my opinion, than a lot of these other jobs. Would you want to coach the Jags? You want to talk about dysfunctional? They clearly have maybe the second worst owner in football, only the Panthers. I mean, Liam Cohen's the favorite there. I'm just saying, man. It's just a mess.
The thing is, the Jags have some promising talent on their roster, and they've got money. Those are probably the two biggest things.
You could say the Jags are. You could say the Jags are more. I think the Jags are probably, of the 4 teams that are available other than the Saints. You could say Cowboys maybe, but I think they're going in such a wrong direction. I think they have no running game and maybe no ability to get a running game. And
who, the Cowboys?
Their offensive line has the Cowboys. I think they're a problem. I think the Jags is probably the most intriguing of all the jobs available, in my opinion.
Were you saying the Cowboys have no running game?
Cowboys have no running game.
Rico Dowdle rushed for 1,000 yards this year.
They have no running game. Rico Dowdle, you think
that's something Alvin Kamara has never done in his career?
No, but Alvin Kamara catches 800 yards worth of passes. Alvin Kamara gets over 1,000 yards of total offense in his sleep every year. Does it every year unless he's hurt. I mean, you're comparing two different kinds of running backs. I mean, Alvin Kamara is not just a rusher. He's the best pass catcher on this team.
I never said he was.
Okay, well, that you're comparing apples.
I'm just saying you can't say they've got no running game when they've got 1,000-yard running back.
You think Rico Dowdle is any good? 1,000-yard running back.
I never said he was good. I never said he was good. I said he had 1,000 yards on the year. Yes, they do. He had 1,000 yards on the season.
You're contradicting yourself. You just said he wasn't any good. I didn't say he was any good.
Yeah, that doesn't mean they don't have a running game. If he rushed for 1,000 yards, Jim, that's not to be discounted.
A running game. Yes, it is to be discounted. You played 17 games. What's 1,000 divided by 17? I don't know the answer. What is it? I'll do it real quick here. 58.8 yards a game. Who gives a shit?
Okay.
That 1,000 yards doesn't mean what it meant before. It means nothing.
They've got a running game. It's just not. Okay. Not saying it's fantastic, but
really, where do we think they were? Where do we think they were in team rushing? I have no idea. I'm asking you this as we go.
Early 20s.
I think that's I'd say you're way high. Let's see. As we look at this on live TV, they were. Oh, shit, it's the wrong one. Hold on, I got to click on this button. There we go. They were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 from the bottom. 32 minus 6 is 26th. That's not good. That's pretty bad. That's
out of curiosity. I'm not saying
that's better than I thought they would be, because I thought they would be 32nd.
Yeah, well, they had
that's
Zeke
still pretty
as
bad.
their starting running back coming into the year, so let's put it that way. Let me ask you a question.
I like Acorn Tree, by the way, good. Kyle. I like Acorn.
Where were the Saints in rushing offense? That's not me being a contradictory ass. That's me.
I have no idea. I kept off of it. Hold on, I'm going to look.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to that.
Curiosity.
Let's see here. The Saints were
probably close to that.
No. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They were 14th in the NFL.
How?
I have no idea, but that's what they were. Right behind the Patriots, and the 49ers were ahead of them. They had 1,954 yards rushing.
Okay.
But
I don't know how you get to that number.
I just looked it up on NFL.com.
Unless they're counting Kamara's total yards.
No, it's rushing. Those were rushing. They have 1,944
Yeah, I know,
rushing yards
but
this year.
I just don't know where that number would have come from.
The rat
I'll
did
do
it, baby.
Yeah, the mobile monster that Spencer Rattler is. By the way, the reason that I said when you asked about those 51 comments, Taysom. Yeah, you know what, Lance? That's a good point.
Taysom. I forgot about Taysom.
I didn't even think about that. The reason that I said there was nothing really important is because the comments were going back and forth about Rattler versus Carr all through that interview.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. That's what I figured.
Which I attempted to put an end to because, as we've long said,
by the way, rushing
none
this
of them
year
are going to be here longer.
If you're wondering how they got to 1,954 yards, Alvin Kamara had 950, Taysom 278, Jamal Williams 164, Kendra Miller 148, Spencer Rattler 146, Derek Carr 71, Jordan Mims 70, Clyde Edwards-Helaire 46, and so on.
Okay.
So there you go. That's how they got to 19, whatever.
I had trouble putting that together in my brain because I completely forgot about Taysom Hill.
All right, we're running late, but before we get to games this weekend, here are some coaching odds. We can debate the coaching situation again later.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the one thing that I do find interesting.
Yeah,
Ben Johnson is the favorite at two different places. Okay, and here's a number I don't know because I agree with you. He's probably going to the Raiders. However, betonline.ag, which is the only one where you can actually go bet these numbers. It's an offshore place where you can bet this is a legitimate site where you can go bet these numbers. Okay. The Bears, he's a favorite to win the job with the Bears and the Raiders. Okay. But the Bears, he's minus 250. He's an overwhelming favorite to win the Bears job. And now with the Raiders, he was minus 150 earlier in the week. He's now plus 150. So someone on the inside thinks that Ben Johnson is going to the Bears.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wouldn't put too much stock into all of these. Just because when it comes to coaching searches,
I think they're right about Liam Cohen being the pretty big favorite in the Jags. By the way, Ben Johnson is plus 110 to go to the Jags too. So, but I think Liam Cohen is going to be the coach.
As recent reports for Jacksonville have kind of nailed it down to Liam Cohen and Robert Saleh.
Saleh is plus 400, so maybe there's value there. You actually want to bet it.
And hold on, before we get to that, let me clarify this, Sean. I never said that the Saints didn't have stability. I said that they are potentially the worst head coaching job for coaches. If one coach looks at it and job stability, like Mike McCarthy, if you look at Mike McCarthy, that man probably just wants some continuity in his life. That the Saints are an ideal franchise for Mike McCarthy.
Yeah.
But if you prioritize cap space and being able to build the roster in the way that you want, if you prioritize some good young players, if you don't want to go through a complete rebuild, some of these other jobs are better than the Saints.
Mark Gapsky says he's hoping for Brady or Glenn to the Saints. Well, probably not going to get Brady, but I think there's a 60% chance you get Glenn, although the news that Gabe just gave me makes me think maybe it's a little less than 60%.
I don't know if Joe Brady gets a job this cycle now. I think with Mike McCarthy becoming available, as you mentioned the other day,
I think that hurts Joe Brady for sure.
It hurts Joe Brady and it hurts Pete Carroll, who was attempting to come back, which I didn't really see a
nobody's gonna
back for him anyway.
Nobody's gonna hire him.
Yeah,
I don't think. Although I would say, you know what, I could see him going to like the Raiders. And here's the Raiders number, by the way. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
We never talked about Dion. We'll talk about him real quick. That'll be the last thing we talk about before we move on. Dion is plus 200 to get the Raiders job and plus 150 to get the Cowboy job. I think Kellen Moore is going to get the Cowboy job. That's my opinion. The top three for the Cowboys, Dion is plus 150. Jason Witten, former tight end, is plus 175. Kellen Moore plus 220. And then with the Raiders, it's Johnson at plus 150, Dion at plus 200. Is he really going to be in the NFL? And then Pete Carroll is plus 250. So if Pete Carroll gets a job, I think he'll be the fallback for the Raiders.
I think
I can't
the
see him working
Raiders,
Tom Brady. That'd be weird.
I think the Raiders have made it very clear that they are going after one person and one person only. What happens if they don't get him is anybody's guess.
I think that's true.
In terms of the Cowboys, I want it to be Dion. Just
You
because
just want the shit show.
I despise the Cowboys, and I think Jerry Jones and Dion would. I mean, can we just talk about for 1 second?
I don't see how they could coexist. It was different when he was a player.
Cloth.
Yeah, but when he was player and Jerry Jones was the owner and Jimmy Johnson was there, fine, that's one thing. But Dion is definitely going to be a guy who's going to want control of everything. And he's just not. I just can't see that being able to coexist.
The Cowboys have the core in place. Now, how they're going to pay some of these guys, I'm not sure.
Jason
but if
Witten
nothing
be a coach?
else, I don't think Jason Witten is a serious, and that's why I don't put too much stock into these odds. I don't think he's a serious candidate. But here's the thing, and I will give Jerry Jones a lot of credit for this. People love to talk about how senile he is. The dude can market.
Oh, he's not senile.
Unlike any, Cowboys fans call him senile all the time. But
Jerry
can we
Jones
talk
is actually
about
brilliant? But
can we talk
he's
about
also
the fact
egotistical.
that Jerry Jones got rid of Mike McCarthy Monday after all of those playoff games were played? All of the media attention, what were they talking about? The Cowboys job. They weren't talking about the games that were just played. They were talking about the Cowboys job.
ESPN.
And then mid-game on Monday night, it came out that he interviewed Dion.
Yeah.
And they spent the entirety of the night talking about Dion to the Cowboys. I mean, this dude, say what you will, he knows how to stay relevant and stay in the media. And I think that's to be admired.
I got to meet, I had a conference when I was assistant sports editor, APSC conference back in, this had to be 2004 maybe. I got to meet, 2003. Jerry is running a business, not a football team. That's true. I got to meet Jerry Jones and have a conversation with Jerry Jones and Mark Cuban within the same hour, like a one-on-one. Both very cool dudes. Jerry Jones was really.
Did you see Jerry Jones
extremely open to talking? Oh no, I missed it.
It was really good, surprisingly. I saw a little clip. I don't know what it was from. He did a scene with John Hamm and another actor, and apparently he held his own, and he really good.
Huh, interesting. By the way, Kyle, you saying Aaron Glenn leaking is Jets' top choice because he knows McCarthy to Nola. I don't think that's true at all. Everyone that I talk to who knows what they're talking about, and there are quite a few. There are about 5 or 6 people that I really trust that I've talked to about this. All of them, including Jeff Duncan, who was just on here, say that Aaron Glenn is the Saints' top choice.
There you go,
but Aaron Glenn's going to decide where he wants to go. It has nothing to do with Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy is going to get the job if Aaron Glenn doesn't want it. So, anyway.
Yeah, I think someone, like I said, just to kind of come full circle before I skedaddle.
There's lots of reasons to go to the Jets, by the way. I mean, I think they're a mess. However, when you got a Breece Hall, when you got that secondary, and Braylon Allen is a fantastic running back, he would certainly be the lead back for the Cowboys, by the way. Anyway,
I agree with you.
It's a whole different story.
Don't disagree.
Their secondary, I think, is phenomenal. They got other great skill players, obviously Garrett Wilson. I just think that the Jets have so much talent. If they could get a real quarterback, and that's not going to be that hard to do because they're in decent cap space, aren't they? Jets.
I just closed the cap.
I think they're like in a decent spot cap wise. So anyway,
Jets, 24th, not great.
Okay, well, you still got to deal with
$17 million to play with.
You got to deal with a goofy owner there, but however,
who might be too involved in politics to really meddle.
Maybe the Jets defense, man, I think they're pretty good too. So that's probably the best place to go if you want to go somewhere. But we'll see how that works out.
Just to come full circle, I think for someone like Mike McCarthy, the Saints are probably the most attractive destination. Yeah. And we can sit here and talk about most versus least attractive destinations till we're blue in the face.
I have a feeling it's going to
None of us are interviewing for jobs.
No, my gut tells me it's going to be Mike McCarthy.
So does mine now.
And look, if you would have said this a month ago, I probably would have been kind of ticked off about it. I don't know if it's because I'm more accepting or I think this team maybe needs someone like this at least for 5 years until they can get the young maybe Joe Brady will be ready in 5 years. I don't know. There's so many things that need to be done. I think maybe they need a veteran presence. I don't know.
I agree.
It's kind of a weird
I
spot.
just don't think I don't think it's a great spot for a rookie head coach who's dipping his toes into the head.
No, I hear
coaching
you.
waters
That
for the first
I
time.
can-
And that's why I think it's perfect for someone like Mike
However,
McCarthy,
Aaron
who will
Glenn-
probably value continuity.
Aaron Glenn, like I said before, though, is 52. So even though he's going to get his first head coaching job, I don't necessarily consider him being a rookie head coach because he's probably had a lot of responsibility put on him already. And he's been in this game now as a coach for 15 seasons or maybe a little bit more than that. I don't know. All right, real quick before we finish up the show today, your thoughts. We're going to do our picks tomorrow, so you don't need to let the cat out of the bag anymore, but or anything. But just, are you surprised that the lines on the 2 Saturday games have gone up a point? And are you surprised at the Rams Eagles line?
I'm not surprised at either of them, really. As you'll remember, I think I mentioned it on Monday. The Eagles curb stomped the Rams last time they played. I think it was 37-20.
Yeah.
Saquon ran for like 250 yards.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening again, but I think the Eagles are 6 points better than the Rams as a team. It just depends on the health of Jalen Hurts, which playing on Sunday will help them.
Rams, by the way, were 21st in the league in rushing defense. That doesn't bode well in trying to stop Saquon and Jalen Hurts.
No, it does not. But
although they've been better, I
will say their defense, as they showed on Monday, knows how to blitz, and that can really mess with Jalen Hurts.
I still think Philly. I think Philly is probably my choice right now in the NFL and the NFC to go to the Super Bowl. I wanted to pick them last week. I didn't want to be a hypocrite. Look, I picked the Packers way back in August. I didn't really think the Packers at this point were going to go. However, you can't really get away from your pick if your pick's still available. So I think it's probably
and then
Philly.
The other line doesn't surprise me too much either. The public loves Detroit, and as good as Jaden Daniels has been, it's a rookie quarterback.
Look at that Detroit. Look at that total, man. 55.5.
I know. Didn't it
go
go down? Wasn't it 56.5?
Was it? I don't think it was that high, but it could have been.
We mentioned it on Monday. I don't know if it was on air or off air, but I told you about my friend who said he's busy, but he was going to just throw some money on the over and walk away. Okay.
By the way, Sean says an ESPN source said this morning that McCarthy is third or fourth option on the coaching list. Unless that ESPN source is Schefter, I don't believe it. I don't care what from people I know. Jeff Duncan knows as much as anyone, and that includes the Schefters of the world. If he's saying that McCarthy's number 2, or as we said, 1A and 1B, and McCarthy's 1B, I'm believing Jeff Duncan over anyone else. So anyway. All right, well, we'll talk more about it tomorrow. I'm looking forward to doing the picks. I got to say, I think that's a little bit high for your Texans. I don't think, and I'm not going to spoiler alerts or anything, but I think the Texans could give the Chiefs an interesting game. I didn't look at what's the weather forecast for Kansas City this weekend?
I haven't looked either.
I know it was brutally cold there.
I will tell you, as far as whether or not the Texans can,
let's see, 27 degrees high. That's high of 27. That doesn't bode well for.
Yeah, but they play midday, so
20 still high 27 in the middle of the day.
I know. Yeah,
there's no precipitation, so that's fine.
Yeah. Can and will are two totally different things. The Texans can give them a game. Whether or not they will is a different story.
I think that line, again, I have no faith in Dan Quinn whatsoever. As much as I love Jaden Daniels, I would love to see that a game. I just don't see how the fighting Dan Campbells don't roll, and then we have Randall coming on and saying how great they are, and then they'll choke in the NFC Championship game. That's
no, this is the conflicting game for Randall, and I hate that he's not here to talk about it.
I don't know where it is this morning.
Because you've got Cliff Kingsbury on one side and Dan Campbell on the other.
That's right. I didn't even think about that. You got a point there. All right, well, we'll have fun with our picks tomorrow after Doug Moot's on. Looking forward to seeing what you got. As I did last week, will not cheat off of anyone's paper. I don't look at them until after I'm finished with mine. So we'll see you tomorrow.
Sounds good. All righty.
By the way, everybody, before we go off the air today, I get this every time that Gabe and I have get into it. I don't know how else to explain this to y'all. It's like we do this show when we have guests, especially when it's someone that I feel comfortable talking to, like Gabe, like Doug Mouton. I probably wouldn't get as riled up with Duncan if I didn't agree. Dunk said some things that I don't necessarily agree with. I don't feel as although Dunk and I in social situations have definitely been more interactive. But it's like if someone were sitting on my couch. And Gabe lives too far away to sit on my couch. So we couldn't do that on a regular basis. He lives 6 hours away. Kyle says, see you from the Caribbean. Enjoy it, man. Enjoy it. It'll be nice weather. Great show. Thank you. It was a good show. I enjoyed today. So anyway, Gabe and I are just having fun. Just like I like to pick on UBN. I'll pick on him tomorrow as well. Tomorrow, again, is our pick'em show, but that'll be the second half of the show. The first half will be Doug Mouton. Well, it'll be my monologue, and then Doug Mouton coming on. A lot like today. We'll get Doug Mouton's thoughts on the Saints coaching shows. Probably won't. We will talk about Mickey Loomis, of course, but not nearly as much as we talked about Mickey Loomis today. So tomorrow will be, maybe we'll know more about Aaron Glenn. Maybe the odds will change again. We'll certainly look and see where the odds are. So plenty to look at tomorrow. Programming note, there is no show on Monday. It is a company holiday for Martin Luther King Day, and I'm going to take the day. If they give me a day right now and I'm able to, unless we have breaking news, if there is a Saints coach over the weekend, a Saints coach and hire, whenever that happens, we might have a live show right after. So be ready. If you see the Saints hire a coach, you might want to check out that YouTube page because we might have an impromptu live show. Not might, we probably will. So otherwise, I'm going to be off on Monday and take the holiday with everybody else. So yeah, and other than that, we're gonna run through till the Super Bowl. We will be on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. In fact, Super Bowl week, we're working on Radio Row. We may have 4 or 5 shows that week. We'll see how it goes. But whatever, we'll get into that more. That is going to wrap it up for us today. I want to certainly thank Jeff Duncan. It was the first time. I didn't realize this. He hadn't been on the show since April. That's how long it had been since Jeff Duncan was on the show. And he, if you remember, it wasn't that long ago. He was on here every Friday, but he's got so much going on with Saints Insiders. But we will have him on again before the Super Bowl. Thank him for coming on. Thank Gabe for doing all the things that he does behind the scenes and coming on the show and having fun as we pick at each other. We'll do it again tomorrow. Doug Mouton, Gabe Henderson, Uncle Big Nick. A reminder to subscribe to our Dattitude YouTube page. Click the little bell to receive notifications when we go on the air live. If you're still watching on YouTube, give us a like. Don't forget to do that. You can also find us wherever you get your podcast, including Apple, Spotify, and many more. You can also find a replay of the show, as always, on NOLA.com/sports. You can find me, bet.NOLA.com. You can find our insiders, NOLA.com/Saints. We will see you on Friday. Stay warm until then. Enjoy it. Who's going to be the next Saints? I don't think we're going to know before Friday, but who knows? We'll see you then. Take it easy, my friends.
If you're looking for the latest scoop and in-depth interviews on the Saints, the NFL, the Pelicans, LSU, along with the best bets of the week, then lucky you. Along with high-powered, in-the-know guests who cover our teams, Jim Derry brings plenty of Dattitude. And he'll always tell you the way it is, or at least the way he thinks it is.